Okay, and we're live. Good evening, Experience Vineyard Church, and thank you for coming to another Way of Life Wednesday. This is the last of ours in the mental health series, and we are going to take on the topic of addiction, albeit incredibly complex and in many forms. We're going to try to keep it, within our time and just get some expert opinions and advice from Allison on this. And just so you know, towards the end, we will try to take a few questions, figure somewhere between 720, 725. So if you start posting them early, odds are I'm not going to be able to see them and they're just going to get pushed up to the top. So if you have one, hang on to it and put it there. Um, my email will be in there, of course. So please email us any questions, concerns, resource needs.
No complaints, please. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Encouraging comments are always accepted. And our fragile egos.
Yes, you have to understand what you're dealing with.
Yes. So, Allison, so addiction's a big topic, and um, we are lucky to be in a church that is recovery fluent. Um, and we know addiction takes on many forms, whether it be substances, food, gaming, sexual addictions. The list goes on and on. Basically, humans are appropriating behavior in a negative way. So we're going to be sensitive to the fact that um, a lot of them operate similarly, but we also recognize that some of them have different outcomes and severities and
Yeah.
have unique things, like such as food. We need to eat. So there's a different relationship we need to have with food, as opposed to, say, alcohol. We know, let's abstain, step one, right? We can't abstain from food. So I'm putting that caveat out there, everyone. We understand that there's a lot of um, things about it, that there are nuances. But I think in the framework of COVID-19, Allison, how do you see like more opportunity for relapse in in various addictions?
Well, what I see across the board for people in the environment that we're in such a really high stress time in our society. And there's so many changes and so many losses and transitions and uncertainty. And when people are kind of forced into that environment and also forced into an environment where they don't have the normal coping skills that they had in order to deal with whatever issues they had, what people naturally do, and our bodies, it's not even intentional. What our bodies naturally do is they pull us toward what is familiar. So if everything around us is staticky and uncertain, our brain and our body is designed to, number one, provide safety and keep us alive. So our brain and our body really believes that the way that things were, the way that your default mechanisms for coping, the way that they were before, may be a better idea. So the thing about any kind of addiction is that initially, with any type of addiction, the way that it begins to form is that, and it doesn't matter what it is, because it's basically it's an experience, some type of an experience with some type of a thing, person, place, thing, right? Substance, a substance of no choice. What happens is that you experience in your body for the first time a flood of great feeling, typically. So there is, I mean, you guys know this. If you know about addiction, there's always a chase of the first high. So our bodies, in scrambling, I'm also seeing something very interesting, because you can see this in terms of addiction also, because people are also people addicted. And a lot of people are returning, people are returning to like exes and like going back to old relationships that didn't work, because they're going back, to regain some sense of normalcy, which would be a default. Now, obviously, getting high in any form, it doesn't matter what it is. Basically, we know the outcome. and the outcome is destruction eventually. So that is, so a main reason is that in every way people are returning to their default mechanisms. So now another factor is everybody being in a state of isolation, because the nature of, as a disease progresses, depending upon the drug of no choice, it doesn't matter. Very often the bar room is home. So the bar room can be isolation. So when you start to couple together an experience of isolation, our bodies, we're very like dependent, things that fire together, wire together. So being in isolation and using a substance usually is coupled together because that's the nature of the disease. And I'm going to talk about that in a second because I think that's important. Because in order for the disease to function, it has to have certain variables that must be in place in order for it to live. So like secrecy, being hidden, isolation, those kinds of things support the continuation of use, right?
Yeah.
So there's isolation, there's that. But then you also have the return to home and possible, depending upon your drug of no choice. Again, depending on who was involved in your family disease, because any addiction is also a family disease. So when you're returning to family environment, and unfortunately, our families or different relationships, when they feel stressed, can return to the default mechanisms in the relationship. So now you have all of that stuff going on. So people are they're pulling out their old, skills to manage the relationship, which very often can also support the disease and the addiction, right?
Yeah.
And, we know that, this is a spiritual disease. It's a fact. People who aren't spiritual know that it's a spiritual disease. So if you look at any of the publications, any of the studies on addiction, you will see, and it's openly discussed, that because people have a higher power, that is the primary reason why there's such a great success rate, which is really related to the 12-step program. So right. We know that spirituality and the design for living, that's one of the main reasons why it works so well, is that there's a surrender and there's a focus entirely on telling the truth, admitting the reality. So the only way for the disease to function is for that reality to no longer be a reality. So it subtly becomes not true anymore. The thing about the consistent ability to be in the community and have a design for living, the 12-step program, because that's what it is. It's a design for living that has replaced the old design for living. And it replaces it with everything functioning. Everything that's biblical actually is in the 12-step program because it's written in the Oxford movement by Christian men. So basically, it is a design for living based on biblical principles. And it's the majority of it is about community and not isolation, telling the truth, So I can't, he can, I'll let him, right? That's first 3 steps. So now people are finding so many different, like it's coming in every direction, and people are really feeling disoriented. I can tell you that. Yeah. Things that they once knew, they no longer know. So, and they can't find their design for living. I mean, I have a suggestion for that. Should I say that now or?
Yeah, that's perfectly appropriate, right? Because we want to be giving coping skills as we move through this. That's fine, please.
Yeah, I mean, I love this. I think this idea of I believe that you can create this design for living and this community and this whole thing even in the environment that we're in. And the reason that I know that is because I've done it. So basically, I'm just going to give a tactical thing. 30-day calendar,
Mhm.
you know, the little boxes every single day. So if, let's say somebody has relapsed, let's just use that as an example. So now what they know is I got to do 90 and 90. Okay. So I got to be, you know, surrendered. I have to be, you know, in my state of surrender to God and living my program, right? And
Right.
now we can't go out and we can't meet. So so an example would be, what are three things? And I would do this. So what are three things every single day, and really fill out the calendar. You got to do it in advance, not in the morning of. Fill out your calendar. So 3 phone calls, right?
Yep.
What are you going to read? So I'm going to read everything about acceptance. So I'm going to go to the big book and I'm going to read about acceptance today, or I'm going to read how it works, or I'm going to. Now, I understand I'm talking about one lane of addiction, but it can also be, I can talk about that too. But if you have other types of addictions, you can go into other resources, which I can actually help you with on the side because it's too much to explain right now. So basically, you want to have everything planned for that day and you just follow. Just, you know, I've heard people say, you know, when you relapse, you go to your program just like at your parents and you do what it says. You just follow the rules until you know how to do something else. Just do that. Right. So it's kind of cool. I love the idea also of, I would carry a little notebook, teeny weeny notebook, and now everybody's home. Now, the decision is you're going to find your pearl no matter what. So if you're going to go to a meeting online and you're like, oh my God, and you can find this, you can read about it in the book. It talks about this, about, you know, going to a meeting and then, oh, I can't get anything out of it. Okay, I can't get anything out of a Zoom meeting, but you know what? It's your obligation to get something out of that meeting because your life depends on it. So if you're committed with your little notebook that here, I'm going to find my pearl no matter what. I'm going in that meeting. I'm not leaving without something. Maybe it's a little phrase that one person said that's illuminated, and you say, you know what? If I carry that for 24 hours, my life is going to change. And I am telling you, if you look for that, even if you can't find it, let's say in a meeting, which you can, I don't care. I don't care. You can even find it in something negative. You could find it as you're walking down your hall to the bathroom, because if you ask God to show you an illuminated pearl, he will. Something to look for that you can hold on to that's going to change your life for 24 hours, and then you go the next day.
Yeah.
So should I keep going?
Yes. Please.
I should.
Yes.
Okay. So another thing I think is interesting and helpful is the idea that the nature of the disease is it has the same exact nature as evil. So the personalities, if we're going to call it a personality, it helps to do that because we can characterize it.
Yes.
It has certain traits that allow it to function. So if you think about something evil or any kind of abuse, the only way abuse can function is through secrecy, right? And secrecy can be under the guise of denial. You know, it's an unknowing, or it's a hiding of the facts, of the truth. So it's the same thing with the disease. And nothing changes until it becomes what it is. So if we can not know something, then we can continue to do it. It just works well. And that is the subtle nature of evil. So even if you see, you know, children being abused or anybody being abused, they will, the way that it can continue to go is by convincing that person to keep it a secret. So the way this plays out also is that this disease is a family disease, right? So it affects every person within the proximity and the family of a person who's suffering with any type of addiction, right? So what will happen is each person plays their part. Unfortunately, the addicted person seems to always get the part of the bad guy. Just can't escape it. But I don't think it's actually true if you were really looking at it straight on and seeing the nature of the evil, basically, is that everybody plays their part in the whole. And the whole is that you have a bad guy, the addicted person. It doesn't matter what the addiction is. Gambling is the biggest monster you're ever going to see on earth. Maybe somebody out there needs to see it. You want something wrapped around your neck? That's a killer right there. So it's just as important as any other addiction. The thing about, and I'm trailing, but I'm going to say this anyhow, because maybe somebody needs to hear it. The thing about straightforward, like illicit drugs, is that it's clearer.
Yes.
It's easier to see the problem with it when you're under society's norms, right? That's why people leave societal norms to hide, so that they can have the secrecy and feel normal away from societal norms. Yeah. But if you look at other things, let me tell you something. You want to talk about a monster addiction? You talk about food, no food, anything around food, body image, all of that's a killer. I bet you anything that probably the majority of our church has some form of an eating problem, because most people do in America. And they're addicted to the back and forth, up and down, constantly in a state. How many people are living on a diet their entire adult life? I don't care what size you are. They're never good enough. So our brains acclimate to the steady state of, I must lose this, I must be different. That's the addiction. People don't even realize it. The addiction is the state of always being in that up and down thing. So it's like, oh, I got to get that last 10 pounds off. I got to get that. But really, if that's the state you're in, that's the state you'll always be in, because you're going to be addicted to that. So if you get to 9 pounds down, you know what's going to happen? You're going to gain it back, because you have to be in that cycle. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is this making sense, Ryan?
Yeah, we're hitting the spiritual / emotional piece of it, right? Where it transcends the physical act, and that's just a symptom, right? The substance.
100%.
So we're addressing that symptomology, and then, maybe you lose your design for living, right? And now you find yourself back in a place of reverted thinking, right? Like your old pattern is now the comfortable one. The bar is home. And as we talk about this, and being that we're addressing a church community as well, and we acknowledge the spiritual nature of the disease, I was wondering if you could talk about that for a little bit, because you provided a really great tangible, like, we can keep the plan, right? Like we can go, I'm going to fill my calendar out. And now that's going to help you in all areas.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to need to really address our spirit. And I would like to hear some thoughts and advice you might have around that as well.
It's 100%. I mean, there's some basic bottom line spiritual laws, spiritual principles that are a must. So when we look at the nature of God and then the nature of the disease of addiction, they're very, very clear, and that's what's wonderful. If you listen to the two voices, you can see which is which. So anything that says, anything that's disease will say, don't say it, don't see it, don't feel it, don't, hide it, but in all different forms. And it can be a very subtle form of hiding something. It could be just the form of justifying it. So the disease will tell you never to own it, but you don't know it, because by not owning it, one of the ways to not own it is to blame others, right? Or to blame outward, to find another reason for whatever that action is. The nature of God is in direct opposition to that. By everything, all paths to freedom come through truth. That's the only way. The truth is the avenue to freedom. Truth sets us free. Facts. So it's about, confession, right? Like we confess our sins, and he is faithful and just to forgive us of our sins, right? And cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So the nature of, and I think we miss, it's like a 3-step process. So confession is just telling the truth. That's all it is. I'm going to, come, let's reason together. Lord, I'm addicted to that. I can't stop. No matter what I do, I just cannot stop.
Yeah.
Fact. This is the truth, right? So now the reality of that, and then accepting that reality without beating ourselves up, right? The immediate, the promise is that he's going to cleanse us, but it requires, I think a lot of, and theologians, you can correct me, but I think a lot of translations, when we're talking about things in the Bible, it's a continuation of the behavior. So it's like, to me, it's daily. We have a daily reprieve, and today is the day of salvation, right? So every day we're in a state of surrender. So I'm surrendering to you, God, right? And then I am in a state of utter truth. I just tell the truth to myself, to others. I own what belongs to me. I don't put it on somebody else. One of the things I mentioned about the family disease, but this is related to the spiritual too, is that what the enemy does / the disease is everybody plays their part. So part of the secrecy in it is that the bad guy, the addict, that one person who's playing that role, is now kept in their secrecy, and other family members will also play that part. So if they become the saint, if they fill in for that person, if they continue to, like, if I'm always doing things for you because I believe you can't do them, then basically I'm communicating to you that I'm the saint and that you're not capable, right? So that also is a lie, and it creates this ongoing thing that positions the addict in a state, again, of denial. Does this make sense? Because now they're not owning stuff. So if everybody's taking care of them, did you want to say something?
Oh, no. I'm agreeing
Okay.
with you.
So are you following what I'm saying? I know I'm trailing a little bit,
No.
but I so much want to get all these different things in because I think they're so important. So just like, the enabler who looks like a hero is playing as much a part of the disease as the person with the addiction.
Yeah.
So when the enabler allows the other person to feel pain, they're participating in God's plan. When they remove their hands off of this situation and they allow the person to own the truth, and this is a spiritual principle, what happens is that person, the disease has less of a grip on that person because now they have more capability of seeing the truth, which has the ability to set them free. When we try to block someone's pain, we're blocking the idea that as you sow, so shall you reap. So we're literally blocking a spiritual law that person needs in order to get better. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I'm saying it on the other end because people who are codependent, people who are addicted to people who cannot get over someone who is struggling, and they need to think and feel for the other person and make them feel, and make it so that they don't feel pain, that's also an addiction. Yeah. Right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Did you want to say something?
No,
I know I'm talking.
No, you're fine. Because this is excuse me. We get to addressing both sides of it, right?
It's all the same.
Yeah, that's it. Because
there's not one that's a great hero and one that's a terror. The outcomes look like that, and that's the weird thing about it.
Yeah.
Is that, sometimes the players in the family are just as sick.
Yes.
Because everybody's because it's a plan. It's a design for living designed by the enemy, the disease of addiction. It's a perfect, let me tell you something. It works. And, and it's consistent. And that's the thing about it. That's what I love about seeing it, is because you can spot it a mile away. It says the same thing all the time, right? When it comes to addiction, and the disease is the enemy. It's exactly the same personality, right?
Yeah.
So now God, the solution is very clearly God. It's very clear. The attitude of living a life one day at a time, biblical principle,
Yep.
right? So that is a coping skill that is so important. Remember I said that calendar? That calendar means that you have your power list for 30 days and you're ready, and you live one day at a time. You live one actionable recovery step at a time, and that's it, in a surrendered state, no matter where you are. And everything is, attitude is everything. Perspective is everything. So if we're seeing ourselves in this COVID environment as not able to do our recovery, not able, because, I'm going to tell you something, that's a trick. It is. Think of it. I can't do it because the Zoom meetings aren't the same, blah, blah, blah. You know what? If you really hear it, I can't do it because, you can always do it, because you always have you.
Yeah.
So it's like, and we can take action. The one action you can always take is surrender. God is surrender. I give it all right now. There's nothing I can do, and all I can do is tell you the truth today. And what is the design for living? And I'm going to do that design today, with or without people. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So, should I keep going?
No, I love it.
It's a topic I could talk about for like 4 months straight.
I know.
You can go away, everybody, on the church, if you want to just talk.
When I brought it up,
you talk for a while. If you want to retreat.
We could do 4 hours on this, and we have
30. No problem.
I didn't
even let Ryan talk. I don't even know if he's supposed to.
No, I'm hosting. Your
hosting.
Your opinion we need.
And yours.
And yes, I just happen to agree with what you're saying all the time. So it's not like there's dissension here.
It's like what she said.
Yeah, it's like it's that meta view, right? Where we pull back and we have to look at things as they are. When we're in it, it feels like the most specialized, personalized experience. But the distinction between disease and the enemy operating in the same pattern, I think is incredibly relevant, because then we know the solution there, right? So like we could basically throw a rock in the direction of God and hit something, right? And we could throw that rock at a friend. We could throw that rock at a church community member. We could throw that rock through an email at our pastor, and these things are going to be heard. Well, I know right now many of us are living with this concept that we are utterly alone, and we might be in physical space, but we're actually not. And I know we make it sound simple for the sake of.
Can I say something?
Please do.
This is, please do it. I think that when you said utterly alone, I think the ultimate goal is to be able to get to a place in your life where you can be utterly alone. We always have God. That's a given. That's a fact. That, we have the Holy Spirit in us. We always have God. But to be able to be utterly alone and madly in love with the best friend that you're with. Because if what would I tell my best friend? Because so much of what goes on, the reality of our situation, and I'm telling you, I believe it to be true, is that the reality of every situation is based on the way that we were conformed to this world and the way that we were wired from the time we were little kids and what our belief system is. Yeah. So if you believe the things that what a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So the way that we approach things, we want to create a new perspective that's in line with God. That's why the design for living of the 12-step program works, because it's literally taking someone out of core beliefs and handing them a design that's different, that they do every single day, that creates a momentum that rewires a lot of their brain. The thing about this having these core beliefs, if you believe that you're flawed or you're not good enough or all these things, you know, and you're not looking, and you're not, the enemy is right there to tell you what to do with that. And it's usually going to be something that really is great in the beginning. That's the nature, I feel like, of the way it works, is that there's always going to be a bill handed to us. So, and that's, you know, and I know we have to wrap up. So I'm just going to kind of end with this one idea, which I really love the idea. It's like compound interest. Like if you want to build a mountain, you know, if you take a spoonful of dirt and you just keep putting a spoonful of dirt, you could build a mountain. And the first spoonful, you're like, oh, that is nothing, but it's actually nothing because it's the beginning of the, you know, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So I love Jim Rohn. One of the things he says is that all you need to succeed in life, so this would be along with be in line with God's will, because he is a Christian, so is to have consistent, disciplined choices consistently on a daily basis for, you know, what have you been doing for the last 5 years? And in order to, if you make consistent, trying to think of the words, if you make like consistent actionable steps for 3 months, right, that are positive and that are healthy, at the end of that, you're gonna land somewhere. If you make consistent poor decisions over a period of time, they compound. You know, the problem with like addictive behavior is that very often the first time, the second time, the third time, there isn't any huge ramification.
Yeah.
It's cumulative. So good thoughts are cumulative, negative thoughts are cumulative, and at some point you get handed a bill. And the bill is usually too much. That's where God comes in.
Yeah.
And when you surrender to him, bill gets torn up, right? But we always get a bill. So all we have to do when we don't know what to do, like it says, do the next right thing. So basically, it's what am I going to do? The one little thing I'm going to do in this moment that agrees with the design for living, that's in line with God and not in line with the disease. Every decision you can ask yourself, is this with God? Is this with God and recovery or not?
Yeah.
And then you know which way to go.
That's beautiful. That is really great. So we are.
Was I supposed to stop? No. I don't even know what time it is.
That's beautiful. No, yeah, we are out of time, and there was one question towards the end that I could just quickly answer one part of, and it was, how do you get someone to believe in what you're saying? And I would just say, in line with the conversation we're having about the truth being the thing that sets you free, my perspective is that we are just responsible for speaking the truth, not the outcome of speaking the truth. I think in terms of a therapeutic perspective or with friends and loved ones. I don't know if you'd agree with me to that, but please, yeah, because
I just want to piggyback on that. So yeah. The question is, how do I? What was it? How do you
get someone to believe what you're saying?
Okay, right? So we never get anybody to do anything.
Right.
And I always tell people, whatever you want, especially your kids, you never tell them something you want them to tell themselves. So in order for somebody to get out of addiction, they have to be self-governed. And one of the things that the enemy or whatever the disease tricks us into doing is convincing somebody something about themselves, which takes away their opportunity to see it themselves. So what we want to do is we want to just tell the truth about ourselves and disconnect ourselves from trying to control their reality, because the way God has it so beautifully set up is that it is not possible to continue to use any kind of substance without feeling like crap. Eventually, it shows up. The thing that unfortunately stops that process is people and situations that soften the blow. The softening of the blow is actually the thing that could hurt the person the most.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna say just one more thing. I really God is so loving that he's willing to see us in pain, because pain it's gold. So he's willing for us to be in pain. As human beings, seeing someone else that you love in pain, we don't like it. So basically, the reason that we want to stop the pain is our perception of pain, first of all, is that it's bad. And our perception, and really, honestly, I hate saying this, but it's selfish. When I want to stop your pain, it's because I don't want to feel the way I feel when you're in pain.
Yep.
So to allow pain, but be there, understand why it hurts so much, but not fix it.
Yeah.
Don't ever deny someone their pain and their opportunity to make their life better. It is the best thing you could ever give them.
I agree. That's a good point.
Did I answer the question? Too far?
We always go too far.
I have never not gone too far.
This is our shortcoming as humans. We're like,
okay.
How much time do you want?
Yes.
We're taking twice that. No.
We're taking over the world.
It's because of the passion for this.
Yes.
I think, right?
Yes.
I mean, to think of where my life was and that I'm now talking about stuff on a live stream during a global pandemic. Right. It is because we've had our own narratives in our lives, and we know redemption personally because we've been granted that miracle. It's very easy to get excited and caught up, and I could do this forever. And that's also why we have a podcast. So
you guys should listen to our podcast, because then we can really let loose. We let loose like crazy on there, but not here. I'm trying to be more reserved.
Of course. And as usual, everybody, we thank you so much for being
here. Don't go.
My email is in the comments. Anything you might need, please don't be afraid to reach out. You need a resource, you need a connection point, you need prayer, you need a book. It really doesn't matter. We have a lot of books in an office that a lot of people aren't in. I'll drive you and get you a book. I don't care.
You know what? Also, I throw out videos all the time.
Yes.
YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I'm like going on rants all the time, just trying to add value, to just give things away so people can just get a tip how to feel better, how to manage something. So I'm always doing that. I know if you want that, follow me.
It's there. It's there. We really, this isn't about ourselves per se. We just want to be offering content. We want to be available in a time where you can't grab someone at church and just give them a quick, hey man, I got a question, or hey, right? So it requires intentionality on all of our parts. So we are once again putting ourselves out there, and we just really thank everybody. A couple of people watching now have been with us every week, and we thank you guys and for your
thank you so much for showing up. Can I say something? Yes. I know we have to go, but another tip I think that is really great, that keeps our head straight, just start the day with, how can I best be of service to God and man today, and surrender to that.
Amen. Yeah, that's always a good place to start. Right.
And finish.
And finish, right? Yeah, that's always nice. These things work at so many other places. Thank you, Alison, for
thank you, Ryan,
with me. And just remember, Experience Church, that it's our prayer that you would not be conformed to this world, but you would be transformed by the renewal of your mind. And Ray, thanks for letting us host a little.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks for inviting us.
And we miss everybody, and we will see you guys soon.
Okay, bye, guys.